pain already. Like just looking
Yeah.
at this, it's like there are people from literally all around the world here today learning with us. And the thing I always like to share when we get started, Lindsay, you've probably heard this a million times, the collective knowledge of all of us here today is far greater than you, mine, Elise's, or anyone else's. So as we're having these conversations today, the Q&A is opened, as was mentioned, but also the
Hmm.
chat. If you have questions,
Yes.
I'm going to ask people to share things. Like, who cares about spelling? This isn't an English class, right? Just get your answers in there. Tell us what you're thinking. We're going to learn from each other today as much as we're going to learn from Lindsay as she brings us through the many years of experience in designing and developing modular content. So, Lindsay, when you're ready, let's get rolling.
Yes, and I know we just sent out a uh, starting point, a little quick poll. There are so many worldwide joining us today, and some even probably listening to this as a recording afterwards. We want to get a good idea of where the business model you represent here, because as you can see, we've helped over 10 B2B SaaS businesses launch and grow their academy programs, but I'm sure we have a lot of different businesses represented here today. So just trying to kind of get a grasp of that. And while we do that, introduce ourselves a bit more. So as I said, Chris and I had met at HubSpot Academy, and my time there was focused on helping us build and scale our education. For those that aren't familiar with HubSpot, HubSpot is a B2B software option for your business that helps you market and sell and service your prospects and your customers. And when we set out to develop HubSpot Academy, our goal was always to provide world-class education that helped our learners transform and build business skills. That was a very big goal to accomplish and a big way for us to not only develop that education, but to scale it was with modular training. We are very passionate about this topic and have helped other businesses since then. We launched SaaS Academy Advisors in 2021 and have helped other SaaS businesses apply this modular training concept to not only help them launch their education, but to build it for more personas to help them keep their education up to date and to also grow their audience and their education. Chris, I probably filled in a lot of some of your intro as well, but any other things you want to add or introduce yourself?
Sorry, I was just typing in the chat pane if there's any questions
Yeah.
around what SaaS is, software as a service.
Oh, yes.
Um, I think you've done a really good job. I'm really excited to get into this all. So I think let's keep moving here. I think introductions are good, and just really excited to get this next slide.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So, what are we going to be talking about here today? We're all going to address this problem that we're facing. No matter what company or business we're representing here today, everyone here is focused on creating education. And my guess is that we all have faced the same problem that we'll be talking about. We'll then uncover what modular training is. Certainly don't want to bury the lead here. Go through the phases of modular maturity, the pillars. There's 4 key pillars we want to be thinking about. And then we'll leave with some step-by-step guide on how to make that shift and some next steps that you can start to apply. All right, so I went into ChatGPT and I typed in, give me an image of an instructional designer that's been asked to create a course that now has to be updated and now is having duplicate work across multiple teams and struggling to keep the learner engaged and interested. This is the image that ChatGPT gave me. This might resonate with most of us here, right?
I
We
can identify with this for sure.
Yes, we might
Sarah
be
says
pulling our
relatable
hair.
too.
Yes,
Yeah.
we see the sticky notes everywhere, right? We see the
Yeah.
bright ideas that we have, but we're just bogged down in maybe our product or software changing constantly, just trying to keep up. So the idea here in this space of chaos is how can we really start to scale and grow our education without actually scaling the chaos, right? Because we've all felt that pain before. We've felt that our content needs to be constantly kept up to date, but our product is constantly changing. We're also seeing duplicate work across teams, maybe the marketing team or the support team or the customer success team. Everyone's starting to do similar things. And we're also struggling to keep up with learner needs as well. So really, product changes are going to be inevitable, right? But with modular training, they don't have to derail your education strategy. So what modular training is this short form, flexible content that's reusable and designed to scale, adapt, and evolve. I always like to use the building blocks idea, or in this case, I kind of used Legos as a way to show this concept. But think about all of these pieces of education that we have. Those are all ultimately building blocks, kind of like this image on the left-hand side, all scattered. We have all of these components. They look different. They solve for different needs. If we're able to start to organize those and bucket those into places and pieces, we can start to build really solid structures. We can start to build something more than just a bridge. We can build something that's a castle. We can build something that's a spaceship. So when you think about a Lego, for instance, it's just this small building block that is able to help you build this bigger picture. So whether you've launched one course, maybe you have 10 courses, modular training applies to anyone, no matter what stage you're at in your course creation process.
And Lindsay, I think you make such a good point there around who it's relevant for. We see this all the time, and when I saw that scaling chaos picture, it reminded me of so many programs start with a course. And modular content doesn't really, it's kind of back of the mind. It's like, I'm just building my first course. And then they start getting some traction. It's like, oh, we're gonna build another course, and then build a second course and the third course. And before you know it, you have 4 courses, 2 of them are out of date. There's duplicate content. You said the same thing different ways. And then like that chaos creeps up on you until it's too late. So for all of you here today, if you're just getting started, if you're just thinking about an education program, or you've just created your first course, like now's the time to get ahead of it, right? Before you get to that chaos. So I just wanted to like re-emphasize that, because we see that so many times of programs taking off, and then this kind of coming back to haunt them when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 courses in.
Right, exactly. And that's what I love about this topic. It's applicable to anyone and everyone here. Building blocks is a great way to think about this concept, but let's actually think about it as if you have an academy, right? Let's say, this is a fictional company here, but let's say they have 4 courses, right, that live in their academy. And those 4 courses are made up of lessons. This may be how we discuss what we have in our library. But if we really break it down, right, we know that that's much more than just 4 courses, and we know that it's much more than 4 plus lessons, right? What makes up those lessons are different assets, and assets can look different. We might have videos, we might have PDFs, we might have quizzes or self-assessments. Those assets help make up those lessons and help make up those courses. Those all serve different purposes. But when we really peel back and start to think about these as modules, we're not just looking at 4 courses, right? We're starting to look at this entire library of all of these different modules. And if we were to even group these different modules, we no longer just have 4 courses. We actually have a library of 34 videos. We have multiple quizzes. We have multiple PDFs. We start to have all of these libraries of assets. And the idea here is to not just see your academy or just to see your education as the number of lessons you have or the number of courses that you have, but really the library of education that you have, and starting to uncover how you can use that, how you can update those pieces and keep them in those bite-size formats. And by bite-size, that could look different for all of us here. Some of you might be thinking, oh, bite-size, 2-minute video. Others might be thinking, no, more like a 10-minute video. We're not defining that in this way. We're just thinking about these as like individual building blocks. And so when we think back to that example of those 4 courses, right? What we can start to see if we look at all of our education as this different type of library in a modular way, we can start to build off of what we already have. We could even build a new course that takes some of those existing assets, those existing videos that we have in other lessons and other courses. We could launch a new course by just adding in this case, 4 additional videos. Think about how much time it takes to launch a course from beginning until end, and it's because of all of the assets that go into that. What if we were to approach our content creation in a modular way so that we are building it with the intention of it being repurposed and that it can live in other areas? Doesn't also have to just live in an academy. It could also live in app. It could live in a customer success playbook or an email. The way we can approach this in a bite-sized way, we start to see more and more opportunities of the education that we're creating.
Lindsay, I want to break a golden rule of webinars and ask a 2-part question to the audience because I think it's so relevant to what you're sharing. The first question, the first part of the question, so I mean, there's hundreds of people here, so the webinar chat might get out of control. But the first question I have for everybody, no negative points for spelling, is how many courses do you currently have today? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, if you had this modular structure that Lindsay's laid out, how many new courses do you think you could create with the existing content you have today? So the first part of the question, how many courses currently live? Second part is, how many additional courses could you create with your existing content if you had it in this modular format?
The
Hundreds
drafts count, or is it only live courses? Because if I count the drafts,
Drafts can count for sure.
And I think that's the beauty of this, right? We start to see our assets and our education in a different way. How if we package it appropriately in this modular way where it can be repurposed, we can start to approach our education to a new segment. We can start to use it in different channels. We can start to repurpose and reuse this in a different way. But what's even better than that, if we're looking at what we have here as this new course, imagine now that I told you, okay, our product is changing, we have to make more updates. When I see it in this way, it does not mean that every single module needs to be updated. It's just the ones that it's relevant to. And we'll get more into this piece of it, but that's the beauty of starting to see our education in a modular way and developing it in that. We can repurpose it to help save costs and to give and expand that life of your education, but it also is going to save significant amount of time keeping that education up to date.
Lindsay, I'm just reading the chat pane here.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So Caitlin's saying 20 to 30 courses currently. She could see it going up to 50 with this format. I'm seeing 20 to 40, 10 to 20. So it looks like just this concept and how everyone's kind of taking to it. It's like we have an opportunity here to 1x, 2x, 3x, 5x our content with our existing content. And for those of us who create educational content, we put so much time and effort into it. How great is that we can repurpose and reuse that for different courses without having to create it over again? So I know we have a lot more to talk about, and we're going to get in kind of to the step-by-step here a bit, but I just wanted to share that as we move forward. Some really great conversation in the chat pane and some data points. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, it makes my modular heart so happy. This is certainly the topic and the soapbox I get on often. So very excited to hear this discussion, and we're going to continue this discussion even after this webinar. But yes, we'll go back to some of those pain points, right? Because I think what was key in some of what was even being put into the chat pane is that a lot of times we're focused on the real cost or the cost of creating education, right? And that comes a lot of times with launching an academy or launching your education program. But that's why we often say the real cost isn't going to be in creating it, it's actually going to be in maintaining it. And so this is a lot of times the common pain points we see with specifically customer education. The content is constantly outdated and hard to maintain. There's conflicting information across formats. And by formats, I might even mean that between teams as well, right? Where you have duplicated information across your LMS and your blogs and your customer success playbooks. Imagine for a learner going and reading a blog post and then coming across an educational video and there's conflicting messages. That's so frustrating, especially when they're just trying to learn. And I'm sure for many here, whether you're a team of one or you have a bigger team, teams feel very stretched thin, especially when it comes to customer education, because they're expected to do more with less and they're just trying to keep up with updates. And I have,
Exactly. And
yes.
sorry, it's not just that, but like, our lovely, my boss, George, hello, George, if you're watching, they always come all excited, hey, we have this great feature coming out next month. And all I'm thinking is, okay, what is this impacting? How many courses do I need to update? How many videos do I need to put in draft now? Because it's crazy. This is just a major pain point.
Absolutely. And I think part of it is even like we're talking about product updates, industry updates happen as well that we
Yeah.
need to apply to our education. Back in our HubSpot Academy days, these were early days when like SEO, we were trying to teach all the best practices to search engine optimization. And there was one change after another, that all of a sudden we needed to make sure we became a trusted source of education. We needed to maintain and stay up to date with what we were teaching. And so that's why modular training allows us to have that much more flexibility, right? It helps us reduce that content update time. It helps us repurpose. It helps lower that production costs. But this is the big one here that I know gets Chris super excited as well. This is going to help us start to forecast. For many education teams, you might be even thinking like, there's a world in which I can forecast. Yes, we can start to forecast not only what needs to be updated, but what we need to also create as well. And that even brings us to like matching modern learner behavior, right? All of this, what we're trying to do is solve for the learner. We're really trying to create up-to-date, best-in-class education. And all of what modular training is about is going to help us support that. But imagine a world where we then know how soon our education is going to be outdated and what that means then for our update cycle and what that then means for the amount of education that we can be creating net new. We start to kind of almost see this as like a supply chain of sorts, right? Where we're able to allow this to run as a machine.
Yeah, the forecasting is like, I think for a lot of us, not even something we think about. But then we get to that point where it's like next quarter, or to Lisa's point, boss comes to you and says, we have a new feature, or we have a new product, or we're trying to break into this part of the industry and we need a whole new course. Can we get that out in 2 weeks? Can we get that in a month? And if we don't have the information to be able to pull up and say, well, look, here's what we plan to do that needs to be updated to make sure that our current learners are learning what's up to date. And here's the new things. Where do you want to fit that in? It can be just another thing that's piling up on your plate. But when you have that forecasting, now all of a sudden you know what is your bandwidth for net new versus for creating or updating existing content. That opens up a world of possibilities, even when it comes to things like trying to get more resources, another instructional designer. There's so many things that this can give you. Now, of course, this is where we want to get to. We're starting to get some great questions, Lindsay, about like, how do we even know where these things are? How do we track this, right? So I think everyone sees where we're going here. So let's get to that, because I think this is going to be the exciting part of like, how do we take this theory and concept and now make sure that everyone here leaves today with a path forward and a way to actually see, track, and in the future forecast their learnings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's get into the meat of this. What I'll quickly bring up, and then we'll get into more of the phases and the pillars here. This is the SaaS Academy Advisors Academy Program Matrix that Chris and I built out. it represents 7 different functions of an academy program. The reason why I'm bringing up this here, because we don't want to just be thinking about the education, the content itself, but all of the functions that it takes to run an academy program. But with modular training, it's going to help impact all areas of your program. It helps show the ROI, which is going to help on the leadership and management side of it. There's a big part of the operations and processes behind this that is going to help strengthen your operations and development component of the program. Even making sure that we're staying relevant with our tech stack and with an LMS like LearnWorlds, or as we see learning advance with AI, modular training helps support that. So I'm bringing up this piece of it, just kind of glazing over it quickly. So again, we can get into the meat of this. Because what we now need to think about with modular training, as we said at the beginning, this is applicable to anywhere we're at in the process of launching or growing or developing your academy program. But the way we think about this is in these 3 buckets of phase 1 being we need to audit where we're at today and start to define what our formats are, start to define our education so that we can define what modular means to us. Remember what I said before, like that bite-sized piece of it? Modular is going to look different for all of us here, but there are going to be those same pillars that we're all going to follow. The transition and build piece of it is starting to actually modularize and establish your systems. And that phase 3 piece of it here, as I was saying, one of our favorite pieces of like forecasting and optimizing, this is where you've built the machine, right? And now you can start to monitor how the content is being used, forecasting those updates and starting to prioritize. So we'll come back to these phases, but where we're really focusing in on here is going to be phase 1. How do you start to look at your existing education or the education you're about to create and audit it and define it in a way so that it can fit this modular format? So these are those 4 pillars that I was mentioning before. We want to start to think about with modular training, the architecture, the design, the taxonomy and tagging, and the development process. And that taxonomy and tagging, that is what's really unique and going to be key to your modular strategy. So we'll dive into this content architecture piece of it. So what I mean by this, by content architecture, is structuring your content ecosystem for flexibility and scale. So we're starting to think about now building out these reusable pieces that we can more closely monitor and keep track of. So you may be thinking like templates, right? And hierarchy, a flow. You want to start to think about if and how this is all going to support both those that are creating the education and the learners as well. Because what we're going to be solving for here is consistency and scalability. So starting to think about what actually makes up your education and what that architecture is going to be based on. And what we want to continue to keep in mind is designing this with repurposing in mind, making sure that we have built an architecture where we have processes in place that is going to allow us to move one piece of education from another place. So as your education exists today, you might be thinking, geez, I really can't repurpose that video. It's so specific to this course. That's some of the changes that we need to start to be thinking about and making sure we have the right architecture in place. On the content design side of things, this is where we don't want to lose sight of instructional design. When we're setting out to create education, we're designing that education with learning outcomes in mind, right? When we're developing a video, when we're developing a course, a lesson, we want to be thinking, what is the learner going to be able to do after going through that education? We're not going to lose sight of that when it comes to modular training. We still are going to want to have many visual, interactive, action-based assets. We still want to be serving for these learning outcomes. But when we're thinking about actual modular training, and remember those buckets of wait, now we have all these videos and we have all these PDFs and we have all these quizzes. All of those formats serve a different purpose and serve a different learning outcome. So when we're thinking about content design, what's going to be really important is we still want to have these clear can-do learning outcomes, but we want to make sure as a team we're defining those things in a similar way. So what is going to be your purpose of using videos? What is going to be the purpose of how you use a quiz or use a PDF? And making sure that you keep that consistent. That way, you can plug and play and use those different assets as they are intended to. If we start to stray from what the learning outcomes are, it kind of loses that flexibility and that idea that that was once a building block. Okay, now we're moving into a little bit more of like the taxonomy and tagging piece of it. Taxonomy being like how you're really going to tag, how you're going to label your education or your content. And then we can, if we have things properly tagged and organized, that's how we're going to then group and surface it. When I'm talking about tagging things, let's say it be a video, or let's say it be a blog post, or maybe an entire course, what we're starting to think about is how would you categorize it? What is the topic that it teaches? What are the products that it covers? What is the status of it? So status being like, is it up to date? Is it out of date? How would you categorize what that asset is? Starting to think about tags in terms of priorities and even maybe your learner profiles. You might have multiple learner profiles that you're trying to reach with your education. The key here is going to be that as a team, whether that's being a team of one, working with multiple people under a team, even other departments or teams outside of your own, we want to have consistency when it comes to our tagging. Because for me, I might deem priority number one very differently than you might think of a priority, or you might think of a topic very differently than I do. All of this tagging and taxonomy is just for internal purposes. It's for you to start to see your education in a different way so that you can start to see how you can reuse it and how you can make sure you're keeping these things up to date.
Yeah, I
We
mean, Lindsay, sorry to interrupt, but like without this, the modular content strategy, like having all of your content in a modular format is almost like useless, right? Like we need to be able to say, oh, George just came to Eliza and said product update, filter by that product. Boom, here's all of the modules that have the product in it. And then in some degrees, you might be taking that product and breaking it down by feature, right? In another tagging, right? So it's the tagging which then allows the filtering, which we're going to see here. Like that's the secret sauce. Yes, it helps with forecasting, but it also helps with something that Lindsay figured out, which was pretty awesome, which was to connect the tags of the product to the product boards. Right? So this is like a dream, Lindsay, right? But the ability for a product team to say, we have a new beta feature, and just by them on Jira or whatever product board they're using to track their product development, automatically flags a spreadsheet, an Airtable, and shows this product is going to be changing, and then goes into the forecasting. And amazing stuff, but it all starts with the tagging. It all starts with that taxonomy.
Right, exactly. We need more than just knowing what the title of our asset is or the title of our course is, and the description of that. And what I have pulled up here is a content inventory sheet, or you could even consider it an audit sheet as well, that we have on our website. I did put my little LinkedIn QR code. So if anybody would like access to this, I'm more than happy to send it to you. Just connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'll send you your own copy of this Google Sheet. This is a great place to start and audit what you have and starting to think about these different categories and these different tags. The way that this audit sheet works, it's a spreadsheet, right? We can start very simple in this way and really starting to unpack and uncover what all of these assets are. What are the building blocks that we already have to work with? You don't even have to just have it be your academy content either. If you're starting small and you have one course at this point, you could add blog posts onto this list. It can grow as you need it to, but what this is going to help you be more aware of is what each of those assets represent and how they can be appropriately tagged. Tagging them with the certain format, tagging them with who this learner profile, what the learner profile is for that asset. Thinking about it in terms of priority levels, whatever it might be. This sheet is made for the idea of it being flexible, but it's starting to see those individual pieces and what they start to represent. You start to see some gaps that you might have. Like, wow, I knew we had so many videos, but I didn't realize that we had such a gap in this topic. Or, geez, I realized that we had so many lessons, but I didn't see the ability to be able to repurpose these videos because they all cover the same topic. You start to see a way that you can begin to repackage things. But we have to start here. We have to start with defining and having a taxonomy and tagging system and auditing what we have in place. And then this last one here is that development process, starting to think about how you can now have everyone apply a modular approach to your education. And by everyone, I mean team. We can keep this within our team at this point. A style guide is going to be important here. We included that in as one of like our SAS Academy advisors tips. But something that I see often come up when somebody's trying to reuse a video, for instance, is a lot of times the end of that video will say, in the next video, right? That's not making our education modular in that way. We can't then easily plug and play. So as you start to adopt this, think about the style guide that you can apply to your education process to make sure that when you are developing any sort of asset, you're building it with the intention that it can be placed in multiple places. It can live in app. It's okay to be living in another course or a different lesson. So thinking about not just the development process from beginning to end, but incorporating that style guide within this as well. All right, Chris, Lisa, how are we doing in terms of questions? We're ready to move on to making the shift?
We are.
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. We're doing really well on time as well. So now with this step-by-step process, we're not going to go too deep into this part of it because this is a lot and we could do a whole nother session on all of these steps. But as I mentioned before, where we all really want to start here is on that audit piece of it. Let's start to identify what reusable elements do we already have? What are the gaps that we have? Use that sheet to start to mark, yep, I could repurpose this or I can't, and make note of why that is. Start to gauge what you already have in place and how you can even begin to apply a modular training approach. From there, start to apply that. Maybe it is restructuring your existing content. Maybe it is taking that video and chopping off at the end in the next video so it allows you to repurpose it. Or if you have education you're already starting to develop or thinking about developing, starting to approach it in this modular way. And by doing that, you're going to start to move into this architect piece of it, being able to, again, continue to define those objectives, solving for those learning outcomes, and making sure that you now have intent behind all of the different formats you can put in place and aligning them with those different learning outcomes that we had talked about. This will also start to allow you to prioritize and make sure that you're prioritizing updates to your education along with creating net new and starting to develop a system in which you can begin to prioritize those things. And then from there, being able to do these next steps so you can get to a point of repurposing and repurposing with this intention as well. We're not just looking to repurpose and add all of our education to every single email campaign. We're still solving for the learner here, and we don't want to muddy the waters by trying to do too much with our education. We're still trying to be very mindful with the intent that we have with our education and how we can still extend that reach. All right, so that brings us now back to our phases of modular maturity and bringing us back to this third phase of forecasting and optimizing. Because as Chris was mentioning, we're able to not only just take now an audit of what we have, but we can take that and start to apply it to an even better system that allows us to start to see our education in a different way. So I wanted to show this example. And what I will say is a starting point is always great, like a Google sheet, an Excel sheet. What I have here, this screenshot is something that I built out in Airtable. So what Airtable was able to let me do is start to allow some different fields to be connected. Like as Chris was saying, I can start to see a better outlook on content updates and how that might apply to my education. So in this example, it's a fictitious example, but we're able to start to see all of the different modules that are impacted by my product changes. So we have something like goal setting. That is a product. We also have project management. That is a product as well. And then we have task management. And all of these updates are coming through the pipeline and are going to now impact all of these modules. By having this set up, I now know, okay, not only is this going to impact these modules, but then that makes my course out of date. I now know when this update is going to be coming. I now know what review stage it's going to be in so that I can not only apply this to my own education, but all of the education that this is going to be impacting. This is the place that we want to be able to get to, but we're not going to be able to get to this place until we first have a solid audit of the education that we have in place, appropriately tag it, and then we can start to apply more of this forecasting mindset.
Like, does this work on webinars, the thumbs up thing? It
Oh,
does.
it did,
Nice.
Chris.
Awesome.
Oh,
Like that's all I have to say, right? Yes, yes, yes. Connect with Lindsay and I on LinkedIn. Let us send you the audit sheet to get started. Right? Like this is just a small piece of what we do with our clients. So for anybody today who has already a built program and like wants some help getting through this, we're here to help you, right? This is just ask us questions, ping us. We'll give you the resources you need. Our goal is to get as many people using this philosophy and approach. And the best part is there's no additional software, right? You probably all have Google Sheets, or maybe you have Airtable or something else. That's all you need for this, right? You're just taking what you've created already and auditing it and figuring out what it is, what are the topics. Then you start tagging it. Then you're going to start reworking those modules. But that all happens within the systems you already have. There's no additional software. There's nothing you need other than taking what you've learned here today, possibly asking us some more questions and executing. But of course, once you've created that content, it needs to be somewhere that can be delivered so your learners can actually engage with it, right? And that's where Learn World comes in. So Eliza, we'll pass it back to you to share a little bit about what this looks like coming from this modular strategy into Learn World itself and then being distributed out to the learners.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so some of you had some related questions to platforms and so on in there. So now I'll give you a short little demo of some of the features that we have to accommodate some of the pillars that Chris and Lindsay mentioned. So we mentioned scalability. Of course, you need to be able to grow. We mentioned how we need less maintenance, how we, of course, want to repurpose our content, and how we want to have independent modular components. So with that in mind, and for scalability, you will see that in LearnWorld, you have bulk actions where you can scale your users. You can add them all in bulk right away. Besides that, and if you need any help while creating the content, you will see that the LearnWorld platform has a feature called user roles, which it allows you to add more people, more instructors, more admins that are going to help you build that content and hence help you just scale it, grow it a lot faster. So here you can create different user profiles where you can specify the exact permissions they're going to have on the platform to help you do just that, create the courses and the content. Now, besides that, of course, on the content side itself, you do have some options when it comes to the courses to just help you scale them and grow. So you will see that for each course, you have the option to clone. And that doesn't only come with courses, it comes with the smaller components, with the activities. You can copy and you can clone them so that you can, you know, if you want to reuse a course or repurpose it, it's going to help you just clone the ones you already have and just make the tweaks and the changes wherever you want. So just another option over here. And then I think we mentioned that in the beginning, LearnWells is also infused with an AI assistant that can rapidly help you just cut down the time and essentially anything you want to create. So in LearnWells, the AI assistant can help you building the course, can help you build specific learning material, whether it's an assessment or an ebook. You see that in here, I'm in the ebook authoring tool, and it can help you do all sorts of things inside the ebook as well. All right, now let me jump over to the next pillar. So the next I mentioned is how we want to have less maintenance, and this is a great pain point of mine as well. So LearnWorld has a great option, which I love, which is the sync option. So what you can do is that similar courses, let's say they have a specific course, you know, that you address to different user groups. So if you're educating, I don't know, a specific customer group or a specific other company, right? But perhaps you share some courses or some content, you can sync those courses and that content. Whereas if you make a change, you know, onto that content, it will also apply anywhere else that course is being used. So that is definitely going to cut down your time. Something else that we also have, and I see that being used a lot, is site flavors. So what this allows you to do is actually, let me set the use case scenario, right? Let's say that you want to make some tweaks, some changes onto your academy, but you only want those to be there for a specific amount of time. So what you can do is you can come over here into site flavors. Just think of this as just different wardrobe, perhaps, for your academy to dress it up. So what you can do is that you can clone the whole academy. So then you have a copy of it. You can work on the copy, make the changes that you want and activate it for that specific time frame. And then whenever, you know, you don't want that anymore, you can go back and activate the original version essentially of your site. So that would definitely cut down time, because if you can imagine, you would have to go back and essentially undo every little thing that you did onto the platform to reverse it back to its original state. And let me see what else I have over here. Just for less maintenance over here, I'm also showing you the intuitive website builder that we have, where it's going to make anything a lot faster for you to just edit out any page that you want into the Academy, either a course page, your landing page, and so on. So just wanted to give you a sneak peek of that. All right, let me move over to repurposing, and I love repurposing. So you created some content, whether it being video, whether it being text, PDFs, or presentations, I don't know. So what do you do besides having a course, right? Well, LearnWells comes packed with a blog. So if you want to run a blog and perhaps repurpose a video or an ebook or a text, something that you created for a course into a blog article, you can definitely do that and just repurpose it to your audience in here right away. Or if you have an external blog, of course, you can use it over there as well. Besides the blog, you could also repurpose something into your social community as a post. And LearnWells also comes with an integrated social community feature for you to do exactly that. And another way that you could repurpose, of course, would be as a lead magnet, right? So if you have like a PDF, if you have, again, an ebook, why not use that as a lead magnet, right? So you can add it in a pop-up and, you know, just set up a nice sequence of pages of steps over here, and then at the end, offer it as a lead. And the final thing over here, which is also extremely popular, is maybe turning that into a live event. If you already have the structure of a course or of a topic that you're discussing, you can also turn that into a live event. So LearnWells, of course, has a native integration with Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, and Calendly to help you do just that and, you know, run your live events and even a webinar such as this one if you want to. Okay, so let me go over to the last one, which was independent components. So Okay, something very popular is SCORM. So a lot of people choose to create their content into SCORM. So just wanted to mention here that LearnWells absolutely supports that. So if your content, if your modules are into SCORM packages, those are supported and you can add those in here. And of course, to accommodate all your modules and the content that you want to create, we have a vast as you can see over here, a great range of different learning activity types that you can use to create all of this modular content, from multimedia to live sessions, ebooks, exams, videos, and all of this. Let me see what else I didn't mention. Now, if you want to further, module your content, of course, courses, this is just a staging, so, these may not make sense, but I just wanted to say that, of course, you can also group your content, not only into the learning activity itself, but you can also group it into sections. So LearnWells allows you to do that, and it allows you to just categorize the activities like that. And besides that, and I think I have that over here, into the courses manager, of course, you can also set up categories for your courses. And I think that would work great with what Chris and Lindsay mentioned on that file, where, if the developer says that, hey, this feature affects this and that, you immediately know what courses it will affect based on the category that you will add them. So keep that in mind as well. You can add courses into categories. And I think something last that I mentioned over here is tags. Because Lindsay, I think, mentioned that how it's important to label and to tag your content. So LearnWells comes with a tag manager that you can use to essentially tag anything into the Academy, whether that being an assessment response, a form response. It could be a page banner, it could be a section, it could be a user. So you can utilize this tag manager over here to do exactly. All right, I'm not going to bore you anymore with these. Just the final thing over here, head over to learnwells.com and create your trial. The trial is absolutely free, guys. You do not even need to add in your card. It's going to last you for 30 days. You want to just test it out on the inside and see, if those features going to work for you in here, essentially. All right, so let me go back into the presentation. So hold on, let me open this in the slideshow so you guys can see as well. Okay, so here we shared that in the chat as well. So the links to Chris's and Lindsay's LinkedIn accounts, feel free to connect with them. We are going to share the deck. So if any of you didn't get that, you will get it in your inbox. So keep that in mind. Now, for all of you that tuned in today, we have a nice little offer for you guys. So we offer you 20% off for 20 months. The coupon that you need to use is Modular20. Again, you are going to get this deck, so don't worry if you feel like, you're not going to remember it. So it's eligible for a Pro and Learning Center plan and valid until the 15th of April. So keep that in mind, and it's only for our new customers. So that would be Modular20, all caps. Note it down, or don't worry, again, you will get this into your inbox. All right, so I think it's time to address any questions that perhaps remain. I don't know if Chris and Lindsay, perhaps you've saved any. I see that our support agents have been answering some during the live, but yeah, let me see. And I saw Chris also answering some in the
Yeah,
chat
there was
earlier.
so many good questions in the
Yeah.
webinar. I think the big one that kept coming up was like, where do we do this? Do we do this in a Google Sheet? Is it possible to do it within an LMS? And I think you shared some of the category tagging that you can do. I think, Lindsay and I typically find that having a sheet where you can add lots and lots of tags and lots of categories is really the best starting place. But where your content lives, and I shared this in the chat, but just to reiterate, like where that content lives doesn't need to change. So I think that's just, again, worth reiterating. And I'm just thinking of anything else. Let's see, do we have other questions?
Someone is asking where can they learn about LearnWell? So I am sharing, let me actually share the Academy with you guys. So give me a second. So this is the Academy that we have with LearnWells. And yeah, we had some of the same pain points that the guys mentioned while creating this for sure. So you can go in there and you'll find the different courses. But we also have a Facebook group, and hold on, let me find that so I can show you. In case you guys want to, join into that, and you'll find other people that use LearnWorlds, and you can ask any questions over there, and people that are already using it can help you out with that. So I've added that into the chat as well. And sorry, Chris, if I interrupted.
No,
Okay.
that's quite right. I was just reading
Yeah.
looks like somebody just made a subscription to the pro trainer. It looks like people are going to get started. So if you're getting started creating your content, ping Lindsay and ping the Learn Worlds team. Their support team's amazing. The Academy team's amazing. Like, hopefully everyone's takeaway from this webinar is like, there's a network of people here who exist to help you be successful with your educational content, right? And that's the end of the day, what we all care about and what brought us all together today.
Yeah.
If there aren't any other questions, just
Yeah, I
Eliza.
see one from
Okay.
Denise in the chat,
Okay.
if you want to take that on.
I think is that a product specific question?
Let me see. So
I think
I
it's
work from the Netherlands. It cost me more than 10 minutes to get code. So not getting email. I'm not entirely sure. Are you referring to entering like the live?
I think that's the
Mhm.
two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
no
Denise.
worries, Denise. We will email you the recording if you couldn't enter or anything like that. Don't worry about that. And also, Chris, there are a few questions in the Q&A. Let me know if you
Oh,
can see those. Otherwise, I could read those out for you.
yeah, pulling those up now. Okay, let's opened, not answered.
I see the one from the anonymous one is unanswered. Or if you wanna, you can also go over to the answered ones if you
Mhm.
have any other feedback
Yeah,
there.
so the anonymous attendee asked, can you share some more details on how to make your videos modular? That's a great question. Lindsay, is that something we can answer in the next 4 minutes?
I could definitely
Uh,
answer
yeah,
that
I'm
also.
sure we all could
Okay.
give our quick tips.
Yeah,
I would always say my quick tip on that is when you're building out a video, think of it as just that standalone video where it could live anywhere. So, sure, you can say, "Hi, my name is," but that end of the video, you do not have to have any sort of outro because
yeah,
this is going to live other places. So, you don't want to say, "This is the end." You do not want to say in the next video. You don't even want to say, "Hey, check out what's on this page." You want to script it and build it in a way that it can live in many different places. I would also say that for the sake of a modular approach and to make sure your updates are a little bit easier as well, we do want to keep the video length shorter. When we're getting to something even like over 8 minutes, you have to understand all that is covered in those 8 minutes, and there's a good chance that a component of that will have to be updated in the future. So thinking
yeah,
about how you can keep that video focused. So if for future updates, you don't have to update everything, it's just some smaller sections, but that
yeah,
intro and outro component of it and whatever you're communicating within that video, we need to make sure it is not specific to a lesson or a course or a page. It can move around.
yeah. And if I could also add, not only like the intros and the outros, but also in terms of what you're showing, sometimes it's best to just focus on the exact thing you're talking about, because if something, another button or another text just changes and it's irrelevant, you don't need to be showing that because it's just another thing you will need to update if it
Absolutely.
changes.
Yep,
And for us, a
exactly.
lot of times it was good to avoid mentioning any dates or any days of the week. It depends on how your content is, if it's synchronous, asynchronous, but for videos, it did help not mentioning anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Go through existing videos that you might have and think about what do I have in here that doesn't allow this to be future proofed. Lisa, that's a great example of using a date. The more you talk about 2021, the more
Yeah,
outdated it feels if somebody's watching
exactly.
that 4 years later. There's still some content that I created for HubSpot Academy that still works because I approached it in an evergreen way, right? And that
Yeah,
was maybe almost 10 years ago. So there's ways that we can develop our video education so that we don't have to be updating it on a quarterly basis and not even on an annual basis either.
And I would like to say something that is a little controversial, but we've seen that it works for us a lot. So for videos specifically, if you have a specific person that is doing the videos, sometimes AI can also help with that because you get to choose a specific voice type and you can use that in all the videos. You know, it promotes consistency. And you know what? If you use a specific employee, what happens if they just don't work for you anymore? You know, you cannot just tweak and change little things. You would have to redo the video again perhaps. So just, you know, another way of doing things with AI would help a lot with updating and maintaining.
Yeah, it's a trial and error too. I think that's such a
Yeah,
great point of seeing what works and resonates for your learners as well. But I have so enjoyed this time because I feel like we are all in this together and feeling these pain points together. And we don't want to be feeling like that image of wanting to pull our hair out one update after another.
yeah, for sure. All right, so I think we are almost out of time. So, and I don't see any unanswered questions. So, guys, if you have any questions that we didn't have the time to tackle, again, you can connect with Lindsay and Chris on LinkedIn or just email us over at support@learnals.com. You can answer via email. You will get the deck and you will get the recording as well. So, yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you very much to Chris and Lindsay for joining us and giving us their insight.
Our
Absolutely.
pleasure.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody. And thank you, Elisa, for having us.
thank you very much.
Till next time. Bye, everyone.
See you next time. Bye.